Hey friends, a quick note from future me before we begin. As you'll see in this video, I ran into a couple of issues with the spine while making this journal cover. Brain fog set in. Think I've spent too much time organizing my craft supplies instead of actually crafting, and I was totally forgetting how to put a folio together with a fabric spine. I ended up needing to make not one, but two small adjustments along the way, but I wanted to pop in here first to let you know that everything does work out in the end, and the finished cover comes together just fine. I'm leaving these moments in because they're part of the process, and because sometimes creating means pausing, rethinking, and gently fixing things as we go. So if something feels a little wobbly along the way, you're not doing it wrong. You're just crafting like a real person. Alright, so let's head back to the beginning and get started. Hey crafty friends, welcome back to the attic. Today we're going to start doing our January project using the Snowdrops Stillness kit from the Attic Heirloom Collection. If you're new and you didn't catch the video for the Attic Heirloom Collection and the January add-on that goes with this, which is called Snowdrops Stillness, I will leave that link down in the description box that talks about these collections and how we'll be using them this year. But basically, I've got a base collection, and each month I'll be creating an add-on collection that you could use with the base collection to build out different journals or to do single journals with just the add-on kits. There is no right or wrong way to use this collection. For this journal, I'm going to be working with something really simple and very ordinary. I'm going to be using recycled junk mail envelopes and turning them into the cover and structure for the journal itself. I love projects like this, especially in January, because it reminds us that beautiful things don't have to start with perfect supplies. Sometimes they begin with what's already been handled and lived in our lives, and then we quietly set aside. And that goes along really well, I thought, with my January Snowdrops Stillness kit. This project will be two parts. This first part today, we're going to be focusing on the foundation, creating the cover from the envelopes and sewing in the signatures. I have done a little bit of prep work with the signatures. I just gathered the pages I wanted to use from the kits, folded those, inked the edges, and I did a little bit of sewing. I added a little bit of coffee dyed paper and some writing page in here, and I've got approximately 10 pages in this signature. So I'm going to set that aside for right now because we don't need that until we build the base of our journal. So if you've got a few envelopes, some thread or twine, a button, and a little time, you're welcome to craft along with me or simply grab a beverage, settle in, and enjoy the process. You will also need, if you're following along with me, a piece of scrap fabric that is approximately the same length as your envelopes and about 3 inches wide. We're going to be using some glue. I'll be using some wet glue today and a glue stick. And towards the end, I'll probably end up using some Fabri-Tac. So let's take a look at what we're going to do. I did say I inked up the edges of those signature pages, and the inks I picked for this kit are Forest Moss and Brushed Corduroy. And I've got my two envelopes, and what pages I'm going to use to cover these envelopes are the collage sheet from Snowdrops Stillness, one of the base pages from the base page kit, one of the pages from Snowdrops Stillness, another one from Snowdrops Stillness, and a final one from Snowdrops Stillness. I'm probably also going to use some coffee dyed paper and some bits of that writing page. Because what I want to do is I want to collage these envelopes to create my cover. And I thought this collage paper here could give us a good kickstart to where you weren't starting with a total blank page. So what I want to do here is cover this, and for the envelope and the cover for the front, I want my envelope flap to come over like this, and then the opening will be the inside part of my cover. So that is going to end up being closed, and at the end I'm going to sew the button on, and my twine will be my closure. So I don't need anything right here because I am going to be folding this over, but I want this to look like an envelope flap. So I'm going to fold it that way. And let's take a look at what we've got with our collage. You can use this as totally a collage sheet and just add to it. You can start cutting this apart and collaging the sheet, whatever you prefer. I think I want to start out with this base page that has some linen texture and a little rough edge here. It looks almost like cobblestone. I'm going to start with that and start covering the base here. So I'm going to add my glue stick to my envelope. And I've got a mat that I picked up at Dollar Tree. I'm going to see how these work. I'm trying to prevent my cutting mats from getting so sticky and worn. And I thought if this worked, these little Dollar Tree mats, I think they're $1.50 now. So much for Dollar Tree. But they could be replaced a lot easier than my craft mats could. And if you don't get the glue all the way to the edge, it's okay. We're going to be doing some ink blending to join these. I've got a little crinkle there, but we can get that out. Okay. I've been prepping for a winter storm we're supposed to be getting on Saturday. So that has interfered with a little bit of craft time. Anybody that lives in the South knows we don't get a lot of snow. Most people panic. So if you needed anything from the grocery store, you should have already gone and gotten it by now, because a lot of the grocery stores are wiped out. Close that, and let me move this twine. Try to keep my desk a little tidy, keep things from being all over the place. And I think I want to just go ahead and fold this over. I'm going to try to do this to where I'm utilizing as much of my supplies as I can. That's something I'm trying to work on in 2026, is to use up my supplies. So I want to go ahead and just fold this over, and I want to kind of keep this a fairly simple project. And you do not have to collage this exactly the way I am. What I'm going to do here is, everybody's taste is a little different, so I'm going to set this to music, speed this up a little bit, and go ahead and do the base collage of the front and back here, and then I'll come back and we'll talk through doing this flap, and then we'll move on to the back cover. together pretty quickly using that base collage paper. I did do some tearing to take the pieces apart to kind of collage them in a style I wanted to. And now it's time to go ahead and cover this flat portion. And I think what I want to do is cover that with my Snowdrop paper here. It's not going to be tall enough because I did use a piece here, but that is the beauty of digital kits. Just because you've used this already and now this piece isn't big enough, you can go back and print this again and we'll have the complete page to use for this flap. So I'm going to go print that real quick and I'll come right back. While I was at it, I went ahead and printed another one of the collage sheets too, so I would have plenty to work on the back cover also and wouldn't have to stop again. So what I want to do is I'm going to glue this down on this flap here, and then I'm going to flip it over and trim it out. So I want to put my glue on the flap. Let me grab a book page. Even though got that mat, I'm trying to keep the glue from being everywhere and sticking on this cover. So I want to get that good and covered. I need to add a little bit. I can. Line that up right on the edge of that flap there. It's a little hard to see. I don't know if you can see it on camera. I could have inked it. I'm sorry for that. I apologize. But you want to make sure that you're not going over the seam. So it still folds over. Just get that down. And then I'm just going to flip it over and trim that out. I am going to ink around this flap a little bit once I get this trimmed. And because I'm going to be putting a button here to use as my closure, I want this to be pretty, I want this to be a thick enough piece of paper that my button doesn't pull and tear the page. So I'm going to also back this with a little bit of book page, just to increase the strength of that a little bit. So let's put a little bit of glue here. Just grab some more book page. Generally I have tons of book page from doing altered books or using the covers for something. Try to get all my books at thrift stores on their Dollar Day sales, when I know that those books, if I don't get them, they're going to end up tossing them because they're out of room. So I don't feel bad about taking the books apart, giving them a second life in a different project. I know a lot of people have some strong feelings about taking books apart, and if you don't want to do that, you can do this with just some copy paper or some scrap paper. You don't have to use book page. You don't have to take things apart you don't want to. But that just strengthens that flap a little bit so that when we're putting our button on there, hopefully it reinforces it and keeps that in place. So what I want to do before I glue that down, I want to go ahead and ink this edge up. And I think I'm going to do that with the brushed corduroy. And I'm trying out something I saw on, I think it was Kathy's Garden video. I saw people talking about different options for felt pads, because the felt pads often when we ink up edges, they kind of just fall apart. They don't last very long. So somebody mentioned using the felt like you would put on the bottom of furniture legs. I happen to have some in a drawer, so I decided I'd try that and see how it was. I still have some regular ink pads if this didn't work. I'm going to ink this edge up. But it seems to be working pretty well. It is stiffer than your regular foam ink pads. So you kind of have to get used to that a little bit, but it's definitely not tearing apart like the pads do. And I think the pads fall apart because it's kind of like getting a paper cut 1,000 times. That poor pad has been cut up by the paper. I am liking how that's turning out. I'm going to go ahead and ink this edge while I've got this out. Flip that up just a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of wet glue there where my glue stick didn't quite stick down. I wanted to keep this journal for January pretty simple, as an easy beginner-friendly starter project. But also, if you aren't a beginner, it was still something that was beautiful and looked like it took you a lot of time when it really didn't. Alright, so I'm going to add a little bit of glue here. That's my love-hate relationship with glue sticks. I am not great with those. I don't often get the corners super well, as hard as I try, and I think it's because I'm trying not to get the glue all over my mat. If I could get over that, I probably would. It probably would work a lot better for me. Alright, so what I want to do now is I want to add a little bit of dimension with this. And this is why, instead of just putting the base collage paper down just as it was, I decided I wanted to tear it, and it's because I was going to do this step. I'm going to take a little bit of this brush corduroy on a blending brush, and I'm just going to hit the edges of this just to add a little bit of extra shadowing and dimension. But again, if you don't have ink, if you don't like ink, you don't have to do this. This is just something I wanted to do. I'm not going to do a lot. I just wanted to hit some edges. Just a little. The way that's turning out. And I'm probably going to come back when I start doing some decorating and put some other things on this cover. So I'm going to leave that as is for right now. And what I want to do now is attach my button. So let me find my button. It is lost somewhere here on my desk. No matter how tidy I try to keep things, it is inevitable that small objects get lost. There's the button. And there's my twine. I did forget to get a needle, so I'm going to need to pause the video and get that because I am going to sew this button on with my twine. So let me grab a needle and I'll be right back. I'm still getting used to where I have put things in my new organization in my room. If you've ever rearranged your house and always go back to the old place you had something and it's not there anymore, that's what I'm doing a lot of right now, but I will get accustomed to it, I think. I don't need a lot of this twine. I probably am going to also sew my signatures in with the same baker's twine, so I went ahead and grabbed out my awl. When you're using twine, you need to get a needle that has a big enough head that the twine will go through. I think I do. I may end up having to... Let me see if I've got a threader. There we go. Let's see if I can thread it with this. Or I might have to change. Or I might have to change needles. I might have to change glasses. Can't see the head of this needle today for some reason. It is very cloudy. I don't have a lot of sunlight here in this room today. Let's see if that's going to go through. Yeah. Probably would have been a little easier to have gotten a larger needle, but it worked. Maybe. There we go. And I'm just going to tie a knot at the end of my thread because all I want to do is just attach this button. And to do that, I am going to use my foam and I'm going to use my awl and place my button where I want it and go ahead and poke holes so that it'll be easier for that needle to go through. Ahead and trim that off just so I don't have all that excess. And I'm going to put the flat side of my button against the flap. And I want to leave a little, I don't want to get it so tight that I can't run twine back underneath it because that is going to be the closure. So I want to leave a little bit of space and then just sew that back on a couple of times. This twine is pretty thick, so I think twice is going to be good. And I'm just going to run that back through to tie a knot. I'm going to do that twice. And for added measure, I'm going to add a little bit of glue here to these knots, just so that later on they don't come undone. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and glue this flap down because I don't need that to be open. I just want it to look like that's the opening part of the envelope. The actual opening part of the envelope is going to be the inside cover. So let's add our glue. I'm not going to use glue stick for this because I definitely want this to stay down. Sometimes I'm not sure how good the glue stick will hold up over time. Haven't tested that theory for very long. And now I lost my paper towel. I did mount a paper towel holder under my desk so that I could grab extra paper towels as I'm crafting and not have to get up. That's one of the new additions to my room. And so that's the front cover. Still going to need to cover the back of the front cover and the back cover, so let's move on to that. I think what I want to do now is go ahead and do this back here, and I want to put a little bit inside here to cover up that security area, and I think I'm going to do that with this checked linen. So what I want to do is, I don't need excuse me, the whole sheet. I just need enough to go in and not catch. I apologize, it's very dry today. So I'm just going to use my ruler to tear off a strip of this paper. And if you've been around the attic long, you know I don't like to measure a whole lot, so I'm just going to line that up, use my ruler again, right at the edge, and hopefully that fits. I'm just going to tuck that in. Just like that, and add some glue. I want to trim that just a little bit more so it's binding just a little bit. Don't need much, just a little sliver. That's better. Alright, so I'm going to ink this up. And I think on the inside, I want to ink this with the forest moss. And I'm going to ink the same edge up. And I'm doing that to kind of give a little different look right there on the edge, in case I don't get that paper all the way to the edge between the check of the security envelope and this ink. I think it'll look fine. So let's get this put back in there. And what I want to do now is put my glue in here, and I'm just going to run some glue right here, and I'm going to use wet so that I have a little bit of wiggle room to get that lined up. And if I need to trim it off, I can. I just kind of want to get that lined up and then burnish that down. Glue is making a mess today. Alright, so this is going to open like that. So let's take a look at what I want to do here. let's see. I think I'm going to go ahead. I think I'm going to use this linen on here, and I'm probably going to print this one more time. Thinking this through. I think I'm going to go print this twice. I think I want the inside cover on both the front and the back to be this checked linen. And so I'm going to need to print 2 more sheets. So let me print that and I'll be right back. I'm going to attempt to cover this in what I think is an easy way. It might not be. But I'm going to line this up with my paper. Grab my pencil, maybe. I think somebody has taken my pencils off my desk because it is definitely not where I left it. So let's go on without a pencil. So let's just line my tear roller up right there and hope for the best. And do the same thing here. Fingers crossed this works out. If it doesn't, we can print this page again. So what I want to do now is slide this inside here. Trim just a little bit more. It's binding kind of like it did when I was doing that inner piece. I'm going to try to get that all the way to the bottom, because what I'm going to do is first I'm going to stop and go find my pencil, because I do need a pencil for this. And then I will come back and we're going to trace that edge and then cut that and come back and glue it on. Pencil has been acquired. It is not the pencil I had on my desk, but it is a pencil, so it will work. So let's just trace around this edge here. I will tell you, as I have done this, I probably, in hindsight, should have done all this before I sewed my button on, because it would have made it a little easier to keep this flat. But I didn't do that, so we're moving on and just making the best of it. But the next time, I will definitely do that. Sometimes I don't think things through super well before I just jump in and do them. And so, if the best laid plans have worked out, that should cover that. I'm going to go ahead and ink up the edges of both this paper and the envelope. One thing I don't like about these felt pads, using them, is I can't tell what color I'm using, because the pad is brown and the ink is dark, and it's hard to see what color it is. So I wonder if I can find some pads that are lighter so I can still see the color of the ink. I do think I have some felt pads from long ago that I found when I was cleaning up my room. I think they were made when these ink blenders first came out. They were for alcohol ink. They are felt. and they are white. I think I have some of those. I may try to use and see if that works. I've never tried to use it with anything except alcohol ink, but it could work the same way. If y'all hear my phone going off in the background, I apologize. I'm getting a lot of memes from members of my design team. They're talking about Snowmageddon, as a lot of us in the South are preparing for what we are calling Snowmageddon. And so my phone keeps going off. But I would rather have my phone go off for a funny meme than things that are too serious. So let's get this glued down. I have abandoned the glue stick for now. If you like your glue stick, by all means use that. I have a lot of glue sticks. I will probably continue to try to use those up, but I do believe once I use those up, I probably will not get any more. They are just not my favorite glue of choice, and that again is a very personal thing. That is not saying glue sticks don't do their job. I don't know if I just have bad glue sticks, if I have bad technique with glue sticks. They just are not something I like using. Alright, I do like how that is turning out. So we've got our cover here. This will be the front, and it'll open up like that, and then we'll have a pocket here. So the front cover is done. I'm going to set that aside and we can start working on the back cover. For the back, let me think about how I want to do that. I said I was going to set that aside, but now I want to think about it a minute. I again want my pocket to be inside here. And I'm going to need to reinforce that with some tape. My envelope is a little torn, but we can salvage that. And I'm trying to decide, do I want another envelope flap like that? Kind of mirroring the front a little bit. I think I do. So what I'm going to do is, before I start working on that back, I'm going to reinforce that with a little bit of cellophane tape, just so I don't end up tearing that even more. I'm going to try to get it just at the edge there. Okay. And I think, from hindsight of how I was doing things, I think I want to go ahead and do the inside of my pocket. And the back page. So I'm going to do that exactly the same way I did this. So I am going to do that off camera and come back in an effort to not repeat things we've already done and make these videos so long that y'all really don't want to sit through a 2-hour video. So let me do that and I'll come right back. Okay, I've got the back, the inside of the back done. So this is what we've got. That'll be the inside cover. That's the front. So now let's work on this back. And I think I want to grab my new one that I printed. And I don't think I'm going to put anything because I think I can use between this one and this one. I think I can cover this up to where I won't need any of that extra backing paper. So let's start out there. And I'm just going to start doing some tearing. I'm going to put this to music so you can see what I'm doing, but so that I can speed it up just a little bit. For this flap, I'm not going to glue this down yet because what I want to do is I want to end up taking my twine and gluing it under here, and then it'll wrap around a couple of times and then tie around my button on the other side. But I don't want to do that yet until I get the whole journal put together so I know how much twine to do. Actually, thinking through this, I might be able to just clip it. No, I want to wait. I'm going to go ahead and start putting this cover together, and we'll come back and do that other flap. But for now, to preserve that flap so I don't end up tearing it, I'm going to take a couple of paper clips and just paper clip that down just so it's out of the way. Before I do that, I want to take my brushed corduroy and hit that like I did the other side, just to bring out some of that paper tearing a little bit and make it a little bit more distressed. To glue that down a little bit more, even when I don't use glue stick. Sometimes I have to come back and put glue on the corners. So anytime you do that, never fear, know you can always come back. And I do want to go ahead and ink up the edges here so that I don't end up forgetting and then not doing that. I can go ahead and cover this flap now that I'm thinking about that. I just don't want to glue it down yet. So let's go ahead and cover it while we're here. And I think I want to cover it again. For this back, I'm going to cover it in, do I have enough there? I think I'm going to cover it in this. This came from the base collection, and I think I'm going to use it. So it's a little bit of contrast from what's the front and not exactly the same. So let's add our glue here. Lined up that seam. Make sure it folds. Get that trimmed out. And while I'm doing that, let's talk a little bit about what I am planning to use this journal for. For each of the months, I have decided what I want to do is use this as like a record-keeping journal. I do a lot of genealogy, and I love to find records of people's daily lives. So I thought it would be a fun idea for this year to make little record-keeping journals. So I'm going to have one for each month, and in the journal I'll do things like in the news journaling about what's happening this month. Like I'll probably even talk about this little snowmageddon storm we're having. I want to include receipts for like things I've purchased this month, for groceries and gas, to have a record of how much things cost during this year. And I'll do some memory keeping in it if we do any fun activities or anything like that. I'll include maybe some pictures of things. Like how that looks. That's gonna be great. So then I'll add my twine. And again, I want this to be a little sturdier, so I'm going to put some book page back there and cut that out. Grab some book page. Same way I did it before. So that's what I'm going to do with my journal. Drop me a comment and let me know if you're doing this project, what you're planning on using your journals for. And are you going to do one single journal and put all the monthly signatures in one big journal at the end? Or are you just going to do individual journals? And just the ones that call to you. You don't have to do all 12. They are sold individually. I'm probably going to build some kind of case to put mine in at the end, as they all will be individual journals. I don't think I'm going to bind them together because of the way I'm building them, or how I'm thinking I'm building them now. So I'll probably build a case at the end that will house them all. But I'd love to hear what y'all are planning if you're doing this project. I have I've started working on February's kit for this. Probably put up some sneak peek pictures coming soon. Alright, so let's top my glue off here. And now grab those paper clips so that we can start working on building the spine for this journal. So we've got our front cover, inside, and our back. So let me grab the signatures. And get an idea of about how thick this needs to be. Because I want to allow some room to grow. Alright, I think what I want to do is I'm going to take my material. And what I want to do is I'm going to cut my material at approximately 3 inches. And I'm going to tear it because I like the torn, tattered look. You can cut this if you don't like that look. I'm just going to start little cut there so that I can tear down. Make sure that is about right. And the material I'm using has a stain on it, and I like that look, so I want to use that. So I'm going to put that up top, and let's cut this the same length as my journal. I'm going to give it a little bit of wiggle room here, and I can come back and trim this off once I get it all put together and fray these top and bottom edges. So I'm going to start out gluing my front on, and I'm going to give myself about an inch, and this is where I'm going to grab my mat instead of this mat. Bear with me just a minute, because I use my mat to help me line things up a lot of times. So let me grab that and flip that over. And I think I want to give myself an inch spine, so I'm going to line my envelopes up here, giving myself an inch spine there. And that way I can glue this down right there. Make sure I pull it down. Might not have given myself very much wiggle room as much as I thought. And then I can cut this bottom off. So let's grab our Fabri-Tac. And I am going to grab my book weights. If you don't have a book weight, you can just use something heavy, your stapler or anything. I just want to hold that down while I'm gluing this. So I'm going to add my glue here. If you don't like Fabri-Tac, I know it does have a little bit of an odor, so make sure you're using it in a well-ventilated room. You probably could use your regular tacky glue here. It's not like we're going to be washing these things. And these little mini journals won't get quite as much action as larger ones do. So your tacky glue is probably fine. Let's get that pressed down. And I'm going to move this over here and do the same thing on this side. Let that dry. I'm going to give this a little time to dry, so I'm going to pause the video here, let this dry, and then we'll come back and we'll sew our signature into our journal. Okay, our glue has dried. I'm going to trim this up just a little bit. I don't want to trim it all the way to the edge. I want to leave a little edge just like that and fray it. So I just want to cut that just to get it a little bit closer. And then I'm going to take my awl and just kind of fray this a little bit. Just poke that down in there and get that started. You can just pull those strings just a little and trim up any that you don't want to pull too hard, because you don't want to pull your spine off. Alright, so this is what we've got. Now we want to add our signature. So again, I put all my pages together, and if this is your first time putting a signature together, you basically just want to stack them all together. They don't have to be the exact same size, but you do want them to where they are lined up in the middle and they're at the height you want them. And then you want to turn your journal. I like to turn mine to the side, and you can measure the center here if you want to. I generally kind of just eyeball the same distance on both sides here. You do want to take your time and get this lined up the way you want it. But again, perfection is overrated. That is the thing about handmade. It doesn't have to be exact. So if it does slide a little bit from where you thought it started out, it's okay. Nobody will probably notice. So I wouldn't worry about it. Then it's going to fold together like that. You can't fold it super well right now because of the binder clips, but I am going to close that just a little bit and straighten up my clip a little bit, just so that I can make sure it is centered. If you can see that, then it's pretty much centered at the edge. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold this kind of halfway, and I'm going to do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. If I was binding more than one signature in, I would probably use a template and mark my holes. Since I am not, I am doing just one signature, I am just going to kind of eyeball this. I'm going to put 3 holes in the center here with my awl, right in the center spine here, going all the way through to the outside. I'm going to start with my middle one, just kind of eyeballing that as to what the center is. And push that through. Be careful, don't put your hand there because you don't want to poke yourself. These awls are very sharp. And I want to come up about 1 inch from the bottom and top and poke my other 2 holes. And it's hard to show you this on camera, but I can show you that and then close it back. My top one will be about right there. And then it comes out just like that. Alright, now what I want to do is get my twine. I am going to sew this together with the twine. And what I want to do is I want about 3 lengths of this twine to sew this pamphlet stitch. And that's 3 lengths of the journal. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And I always err and give myself a little bit of extra just to be safe. And I have glue all over my fingers. I did switch to a larger head needle to make that a little easier. And what you're going to do is you're going to start in the center and go through that hole that you made and pull it in. And I always take a binder clip and just clip the very end, just so that when I'm doing this I don't end up pulling my thread all the way through. Then you're gonna turn it however you need to do it so you can see it. You want to go back through the hole you made here, and this will be a little trickier because sometimes you can't see that hole you made on your fabric. So when that's the case, I'll go in and stick my awl back through just so I can see it, and then get my needle back where that awl is, and then take the awl out, and that should get you about lined up. You may have to play with it a little bit to get your pages back in. You don't want to poke extra holes. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting that to go through, so let's try that one more time. There we go. And I'll pull that through, and then you'll go to the top one, go all the way across to the top hole that you did, pull that through, and then what you're going to do is you're going to go back in that center hole. And here you want to be careful that you don't catch that twine when you're going back in the hole, because you won't be able to tighten it to keep your signature secure. So let's check, make sure before we go in. And if you'll pull that to the side a little bit, like you take your twine and pull down, getting that tight, most of the time you can go back in the hole and angle up and hopefully not catch the thread. Just kind of be careful, these holes are a little tight. Okay. And now you want to open your journal up, pull that through. At this point you can take your clips off, and you want to tighten your signature. And the way I like to do that is I will start working with my twine. If you're using, this is your first time doing signatures, sometimes it's easier to use waxed cording because it'll slide a little bit easier than this twine will. And this twine is kind of thick. So what I'm trying to do is just get these evened up a little bit. There we go. Without tearing my paper. And I did catch that twine. So with that, I just want to go back and take that apart so that I can tighten these. Otherwise, it won't let me tighten them. Okay. And one of your strings needs to be on the opposite side of your center cord, where you've got one over here and one over here. once you get that tight, you want to make a square knot. And do a square knot. It's right over left, so your right cord goes over your left cord, forming an X. And then through the hole and down. And then left over right, so your left cord goes over your right cord, form an X. And that'll give you a square knot, and generally those will keep your journal pretty secure. If in doubt, you can add a little bit of glue there to that knot to keep that in place, but if you do, don't close your journal until that's good and dry, otherwise you'll glue your journal together. So there we've got our little envelope journal cover here. It will give us plenty of room for our signatures. It'll give us plenty of room for our signatures to grow here a little bit. And because this is bigger than the signature, if you hold it like that and we've got a soft spine, it is going to flop. So this is more like a little folio style signature. You could have made this spine smaller and it wouldn't flop as much because you wouldn't have as much give here, but I wanted to make sure I had plenty of room to add things to this journal, so that's why I did the 1-inch spine. Again, this is just the way I'm doing it. It is not the way you have to do it. If you don't like that, you can always use envelopes that are more closer in size to your actual journal pages. But this is just going to give me a good little folio style journal that I can add things to it for the month. It'll open flat. I can write, and I'm going to come back and add my pockets and things, and when I get it all done, it'll wrap close like that. So let's go ahead and add the twine to the back. That's going to be our closure. Take these clips off. And I'm going to leave this because I may end up adding something to these later on. Put these clips up really quick so that we've got some space to work on the desk. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to add our twine that's going to make our closure. So what I'm planning is it will be like that, and then it's going to wrap around a couple of times and then wrap around my button. I want to give plenty of room for growth, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this about 5 times. So that was 3, 4, and 5, and then give myself some room, and then I can always come back and trim this up if it's too much. And I'm just going to tie a knot to keep this from fraying here. And that's probably way more twine than I need. I could have waited and done my signatures first and decorated them and known exactly how much twine I needed, but I wanted to go ahead and do this part for this part of the journal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my string right there in the middle, cover it with cellophane, and add some glue. So I'm going to add a little bit of Fabri-Tac right here, because I want to make sure this doesn't come out, and I'm going to even tie a little knot right here to try to keep it, prevent it from pulling through from use. So I'm going to place that in the Fabri-Tac. Now I'm going to take my cellophane tape and just tape over that, leaving that knot sticking out the edge of the cellophane tape, and hopefully this will prevent that being pulled and coming back through. And I'm gonna go ahead and close this flap with some Fabri-Tac. That lined up right there. And I'm gonna put a couple of binder clips on here just to hold this flap down while the glue's drying. Bigger one so that I can go all the way to the edge there. No, it won't, but that's okay. That'll go close enough. And one more right here. So that pretty much covers putting this together. The more I have thought about this journal, the more I have decided I'm not happy with the spine. I did make the spine too big because I made the spine like if it was a regular journal, which a lot of times with memory books and journals, I will make my spines 1 inch wide, and that's to add lots of ephemera and pictures and things like that. In hindsight, thinking back through this as I sat here once I turned the camera off, because this journal is just for a month, it doesn't need to be that big. So, what do I need to do to fix this? There's a couple of things. I could go back and reattach a new spine with the fabric, covering up that binding, and I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think that's gonna be the simplest, the easiest, and the least destructive with this. I'm gonna use the same material I did, and I hope you're understanding that. What I'm gonna do is I folded this to where the book is closed. The spine, the edges of each of the covers come together like that, and the journal pages are tucked in to where you can see this muslin cloth is now tucked in there. And I think I'm gonna just clip this, and this is a total experiment. This is where lots of times when you're making projects, if they go awry and not like you thought they should, most of the time there are fixes for them. Again, it's just paper. I don't have a lot in this at this point as far as if I did want to redo it, other than some time and having to reprint my pages. I used recycled material, but I think this is going to work. So what I want to do is get some more of my material, and I want to have a 1/2 inch coming over each side, so that'll be 1 inch, and about 1/4 inch. So I want this to be 1 1/4 inch wide. So I'm going to mark this. So 1 1/4, and I think I'm going to do 1 5/16 just to give me a little bit of room when I'm tearing. So I'm going to mark that. And then tear it again. I'm going to go ahead and cut this again. I'm going to, again, leaving myself extra. I'm going to give myself a little extra this time, because last time I almost didn't give myself enough. And what I want to do is I want to glue 1/2 inch here, wrap this around, and then 1/2 inch here. And that'll give me a little 2-layered look with the spine. And I think that's going to fix this. I might be wrong. I might be totally wrong. But we can test it out and see. So I'm going to go ahead and add my Fabri-Tac. Just the more I thought about it, I just wasn't happy with how those signatures sagged in there. And they may still sag. Glue this down. And now let me think about this just a minute. I think I'm going to run a... No, I'm not, because I want that still to be able to open. So I'm going to run my bead of glue right here. Pull this kind of tight. And I'm going to clip this in place, because I want this to stay tight while it's drying. So hopefully it takes up that slack from having that spine too big. So let's add our binder clips. We will let this dry, and then we'll come back and we'll test the theory and see if this worked. Okay, time to test in real time how this turned out. I'm going to take the binder clips off. Now that the glue's dried, and fingers crossed I'm going to like this better, but if not, it is just paper. I still have this very long twine here because I am leaving that to add for growth in the journal. So this is what we've got. It didn't fix everything because I've got this little spine here. Trying to think of how I could fix that. It did fix it some. I do like it better. I still don't love it. Let me think here on how I could possibly fix that. I think I could glue that down to the back cover there, and then it flipped this way. I think that would work okay. Again, don't know. It is a test in progress. But I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to take... I can't do it both ways, because if I did it both ways, then my cover wouldn't open. But I think if... Let me think this through here a minute. I think if I did it this way and just glued that extra fabric to the back spine, at that point it would still open like that, and the spine would still open. Pretty sure that'll work. Again, never done this before. Don't know. But we're going to give it a go. I'm going to just add my fabric, my Fabri-Tac right to this fabric part here, because I want to glue this to this back cover. So let's flip this over. And again, if you have watched me do this instead of doing it with me, don't make your spine this big. And you won't have to do all these extra steps. My suggestion would be to make your spine approximately, let me flip this over and let that dry, to make your spine the 1 5/16 inches if you're doing the 10 pages like I did. I am going to just weight this down with my book weights, let this dry, and again we'll come back and see what we have in the saga of making a spine smaller. I could have just totally taken this off and resewn these signatures in. Probably would have been quicker in hindsight, but I didn't want to. I just wanted to see if there were other alternatives. I don't know that this is an alternative, but we will see when the glue's dried. We'll be back. Okay, once again, time to test the experiment. Let's see if this fixed it to where I like it. We've got the cover. I like the way that is now. This still moves like this. And I think that did. The cover still works like that. It opens there. Alright, I am pleased with how that turned out. So this is just a little lesson that sometimes things do not go as you had planned them. Sometimes when you don't think things through and you just do them the way your mind has always done them, even though this is a much smaller project. I didn't adjust for the size of the spine to be a smaller project, but I was able to recover it. I am pleased with how it turned out. And this is where we'll pause for today. Our cover is finished, our signature is sewn in, and the journal is now ready for decorating of the pages. And it's a good time to stop so we don't feel rushed. And in the next video, we'll move to the inside of the journal and we'll begin decorating the pages using the Snowdrops and Stillness ephemera from the kit. If you've enjoyed this project, I'd love for you to leave me a comment and tell me, do you save envelopes or recycle papers for journaling, or is this something new for you? Have you come across things that didn't turn out like you wanted them, and were you able to salvage it? If so, drop me a comment and let me know what happened. And if you'd like to see the next part when it's all up and ready, be sure to hit the subscription button and come back and join me here in the attic. Thanks again for spending a little bit of quiet creative time with me today, and I'm going to tuck this journal away for now and we'll continue with it soon. So until next time, y'all take care.